and this is a special meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5, Section 551.041 of the Texas Government Code of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville will conduct a workshop on Monday, September 28, 2020 at 5 p.m. via the WebEx teleconference meeting by logging on at the link that was provided on the City of Brownsville Notice Agenda Center. The members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting hosted through the WebEx teleconference can join by dialing in at the phone numbers listed on the Agenda Center. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be made available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Roll call, we do have Commissioner Cowan on yet. Okay, we have Commissioner Galansky-Pasanya is on. Commissioner Munguia, I don't believe he's on.
I'm on.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Gowan is on.
Present.
Commissioner Tetro is on.
I'm here.
And Commissioner Neese is on.
Yes.
So our meeting is called to order at 5:03 p.m. And our first item is presentation and discussion on homelessness initiative.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Marina.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners and public. This evening we'll start off with presentations and discussion on homelessness initiatives in our community. Next slide, please. My name is Marina Solesi. I'm the assistant to the city manager with the city manager's office. We'll kickstart with the first half of the presentation with an overview of homelessness in Cameron County and Brownsville, along with support networks and organizations that focus and serve our homeless here. We will go over some current and future initiatives along with funding that has been allocated and funding that has been received through CARES Act. Shortly after my presentation, I will introduce two guest speakers that we have tonight. We're really excited for having them here with us. And they're joining us from the UT Health Science Center at Houston, Dr. Vanessa Schick and Dr. Jack Tsai, who will cover a brief overview of evidence-based practices. We will have question and answer session after both presentations are completed so that our guest speakers may have time to cover their presentation. So on the slide, you see the point in time count. This is within Cameron County. The community of Brownsville participates in the point in time count on an annual basis. And this provides a snapshot of individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness in our geographical area over the course of one night. This is done on an annual basis nationwide. It's done on the fourth Thursday in January. This year we conducted it January 23rd, 2020. The count was completed at sheltered areas, including emergency shelters, and unsheltered areas, which include cars, streets, parks, in Cameron County, and are based on self-reporting and or observations. It was led by our Cameron County Homeless Coalition, and the results of the count, and again, these are surveys that are done, right, and also including observations, for 487 individuals experiencing homelessness. So that's within the region of Cameron County. It includes Brownsville, San Benito, and Harlingen. Out of those 487 individuals, just to give an understanding of what that's made of, 37% were sheltered and 60% were unsheltered. And the surveys were based on observation. So it was not, they couldn't conclude whether they were sheltered or unsheltered. So that was about 16 surveys. From those 487 individuals, 271 were male, 188 female, and 28 unknown. And then out of that, as far as demographics, 398 Hispanic or Hispanic Latino, 81 non-Hispanic, and 8 unknown. So that's a snapshot based on the numbers from our last point in time count. Next slide, please. There are several support networks for our homelessness. Within the state of Texas, there's the network, which is also known as THN. And that's a nonprofit organization that assists communities to plan, to prevent, and end homelessness. This agency, THN, is the host agency for Texas Balance of State Continuum of Care, which Brownsville is a part of. It is a collaborative approach to planning and funding, and it covers 215 counties. So we are a part of the largest continuum of care. There are areas like Houston that has the Harris County. There's other areas that have their own continuum of cares, but we're part of the larger continuum of care. And then we have our Cameron County Homeless Coalition. It consists of more than 12 organizations located in Cameron County. They have taken the lead in the point in time count, and they meet on a monthly basis, representing, we have representatives from our local government, and we have organizations that are part and meet on a monthly basis. There are other support networks. These are some that I've highlighted. Some also include the federal government, U.S. Housing and Urban Development through the funding that we receive, state governments, and local governments, and the county. Next slide, please. On a local level, we have numerous organizations that help and support our homeless. And these are just some of the major components here. We have our emergency shelters, Ozanam Center. We have the Friendship of Women. That's another emergency shelter. We have our soup kitchen, basic needs facility, Good Neighbor Settlement House. We have faith-based organizations that support as well, such as Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. There's housing support through CDCB, the Housing Authority, and there's numerous other organizations in those areas as well. We're just highlighting some. And also organizations that support through funding or facilitation or other support, such as planning. And that includes United Way, Southern Cameron County, BC Workshop. And foundations such as the Valley Baptist Legacy Foundation, educational institutions such as UTRGV and BISD that do a lot of work with the students that are homeless, the county and the city of Brownsville. Next slide, please. So within the 2020 current and future initiatives, in March, and again, these are some highlights, in March 2020, the City Commission approved the Restoring Dignity for the Homeless Research Initiative report. Some other highlights that were discussed, Ozanam worked with, they were with the Graduate School of Work. There were field students who, and they were highlighted, who helped with their COVID-19 policies and procedures for their HR plan. Other notable initiatives include the emergency shelter operations, the HMIS, rapid rehousing, and food distribution. With Good Neighbor Settlement House, some of the I have highlighted is the master planning and the upgrades, and then also the street outreach that's being done, work with HMIS, the work that's going to be done with rapid rehousing, and the food distribution work as well. Catholic Charities will be working with rapid rehousing throughout the year, and this is specific for the COVID. And so that's very well needed, along with HMIS and Friendship of Women, emergency shelter, HMIS, and rapid rehousing. We have CDCB who's working on a redevelopment of historic Seminole building, which is going to provide at least 40 affordable housing units and social services offices. We're partnering with them for rental assistance, but we're also collaborating with them as far as this project. And then the Brownsville Wellness Coalition funding partnerships for food distribution. Next slide, please. So there's been a working group that has been meeting and providing very valuable feedback, and some of those highlights that were provided in the previous slide have been part of the discussions. In addition to that, additional discussions have been the future possible collaboration with the UTRGV Graduate School of Work for researching, planning, case management, and even grant collaboration with the focus in the downtown area. We've been having those discussions, as well as stemming out of those discussions, the Housing Authority tonight, and I believe it's right around this time too, they're presenting before their board a proposal to amend their waitlist policy to include a preference for homeless families who are referred by Good Neighbor. And they're also recommending to establishing an MOU with Good Neighbor. So those are some of the items stemming from that. In addition, there has been a lot of coordinated work and setup for health services, is specifically for COVID-19. I know Commissioner Nee started with the testing for the homeless in downtown and was out there with nurses. So we want to continue that and have testing kits for the homeless when needed. So that's in collaboration with Dr. Rodriguez, in addition to the fire department. And we received funding for that, for the testing. Next slide, please. So as far as specific funding through the Housing and Urban Development, one of the 3 grants that we receive is the Emergency Solutions Grant, and that's the one that's focused on homelessness. We usually receive an annual allocation of about $220,000 to $230,000. So as you can see, with the CARES funding in round 1, we received over $800,000, and in round 2, we received an allocation of over 1.9. So the total ESG allocation is over $3 million. That's more than 10 times of our annual allocation. And so the first round and the second round are specific to COVID. It is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID. And this is for individuals and families who are homeless or receiving homeless assistance, and to support additional prevention activities to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. And in a little bit, we'll go over, HUD looks at very specific categories for homeless, and we'll go over that in a bit. But that's how the overall ESG funding cycle looks like. Next slide, please. In regards to the ESG, HUD's very specific for its program objectives. It is divided into different categories. It's street outreach or emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, and homeless management information system. That last one is very specific to the software that's being used to track homeless. We have allocated rapid rehousing, which will help with rental assistance, emergency shelters for emergency shelter operations, or it also includes services that can be provided like job skills training and transportation and other areas. And street outreach is basically what it stated there. It's going out to the streets and helping individuals out and referring them to services. As far as the COVID CARES funding, there was some emphasis on, in addition to the prevent, prepare for, and respond to, on broadening existing emergency shelters, emphasizing rapid rehousing, helping people quickly regain stability into permanent housing, and supporting more of the coordinated efforts. And then at the bottom, we have the homeless definition that's divided into 4 categories by HUD. And depending on where the individual falls, they can receive services if that's provided. Next slide, please. The overall funding that we received in round 1 and the regular allocation awards have already been made. They were recommended and approved by our city commission. And so this is just a snapshot of how much funding has been approved by our city commission in these categories. So street outreach, it's $90,000. HMIS, $110,000. Emergency shelter, $380,000. Food distribution. And the food distribution category is not under ESG, it's under CDBG, but just wanted to show the impact on that. Rapid rehousing, $377,000, and rental assistance, which is also under CDBG, is $500,000. Next slide, please. So as far as continued collaboration, and this is our last slide before we go to our guest speakers, we still have pending the ESG CV round 2 fund, which is the $1.9 million. So we will be coming back to you, Mayor and City Commission, for proposals for that. And that would be based on discussions here, research, what the eligibility categories are. So we would be coming back to you and start that substantial amendment process that's required for HUD. The next thing is also having those discussions around the Restoring Dignity for the Homeless Strategies Plan, and looking at strategies there based on stemming from our presentations today, and then also the review of evidence-based practices from our guest speakers, and also seeking support to work with UTRGV, with their School of Social Work, to work together on researching, planning, and securing other funding, such as the Valley Baptist Legacy Foundation. That concludes this first part of the presentation. And I'm ready to introduce our speakers, if that's okay with you, Mary. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this evening we have Dr. Tsai, who is the research director for the VA National Center on Homelessness Among Veterans and professor and campus dean of the UT School of Public Health, San Antonio. He is a national expert on homeless service delivery and serves as editor-in-chief of the Journal of Social Distress and Homelessness. He was the director of the Division of Mental Health Services Research at Yale School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry for a decade. We also have Dr. Schick. She is an associate professor at UT Health School of Public Health and Community Health Practice. She has been the principal investigator on multiple grants, contracts serving individuals experiencing homelessness. Collaborating with community partners, she is lead author on Model Practice, Coordinated Care Model for those formerly chronically homeless. She has co-authored over 100 publications and received local national awards, including recognition for her commitment and connection to vulnerable communities. She sits on multiple boards and committees working to enhance health equity and support individuals experiencing homelessness. And so with that, Dr. Schick, can you hear us? And are you ready?
I think I am, if you can hear me.
Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. I've been really looking forward to this opportunity to connect about we're going to do kind of a high-level overview of some evidence-based interventions around homelessness, supporting individuals with experiences of homelessness. Dr. Tsai will be joining us for the Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation. If you could go to the next slide, please. Great. And so because we are focused on individuals with experiences of homelessness, I, of course, wanted to start by thinking about housing, right? Because that's the one thing that all individuals with experiences of homelessness have shared is a current lack of housing. And when you think about current models of housing, most of the time, people will talk about permanent supportive housing. It's the most popular housing model currently. And part of the reason is because there's a lot of evidence there. There's evidence that if you give people housing, it is not time limited, they will remain housed. And depending on the support model, it might increase their health and wellness. But permanent supportive housing does require exactly what the title says, right? It's both permanent. So the idea is that when individuals are housed, it is not time limited. They are able to be there for as long as they need to be there. And then there's another piece, which is the supportive, right, where they're able to be there and they're offered services that may assist them in meeting their needs and their goals. Some people with a permanent supportive housing model use a housing first approach. So a housing first approach provides housing without any prerequisites. Right? It says, let's tackle the housing and then let's try to understand and meet your needs and goals after you've received housing. So within the field right now, most people are using a housing first model. So providing housing without any prerequisites, and they're providing permanent supportive housing, which is this housing that is not time limited. So the benefits of it are that it works. But I think my intent today is not just to tell you what works, but also where there are some challenges. Permanent supportive housing, if you're going to offer something that's not time limited, it's going to be expensive over time. You also are going to be required to provide those support services. And there's a lot of variability in terms of both the types of supportive services that are offered and also where the funding to provide those supporting services comes from. So prior to developing a permanent supportive housing model, I would just encourage you to really think through, okay, but what is the supportive piece going to look like? And how are we going to make sure that supportive piece is sustainable in a way that works for folks? Next slide, please. So I of course wanted to start out with our the model that most individuals are using within the field, but I did want to point to a number of other housing models that are currently being used, several of which you've already mentioned, which was rapid rehousing. And so when people talk about individuals experiencing homelessness, they don't necessarily think about this housing cascade, but I thought it might be helpful for us today to think about this. Because individuals, while everyone might benefit from permanent supportive housing, it's not clear that everyone necessarily needs permanent supportive housing, right? That's kind of the highest level of care. And so it might be useful to think about not just what works, because we know permanent supportive housing works, but what works for what people, right? Particularly if your goal is to extend your resources to the maximum number of individuals. And so if that's your goal, you might want to think about a model that also emphasizes prevention for people who are at imminent risk of homelessness. So that's about 2 weeks out and you're kind of getting a little further upstream, kind of maybe tackling some of those determinants of homelessness. Then there's diversion, which is for folks who are, we say, kind of right on the front door of homelessness. So individuals who are about to become homeless, and we try to divert them out as quickly as possible so that they never have to experience homelessness. Rapid rehousing, where we provide immediate housing. There's transitional housing models, and there's emergency shelters too. I want to recognize those because they serve a very important purpose. Transitional housing, which is typically under 2 years. So the goal there is not to forever house, but to provide housing and support for individuals to then live independently. Permanent supportive housing, which we've already discussed. And then this other category, which has gotten a lot of buzz, at least within community conversations that I've been a part of lately. And that's folks who actually need more than permanent supportive housing. So their health care, their behavioral health needs are elevated, and permanent supportive housing isn't quite enough. And so for them, they might need even more. So in thinking about what works for whom, different people might need different levels and types of housing. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in my conversations about some of your current population, the clients, the individuals who are experiencing homelessness in Brownsville, I heard that there's still maybe a lot of questions about folks and maybe what they need and what the right direction is to take. And so I wanted to encourage you, if you haven't already, and you may already have done this, but to continue to really understand your unique population, which is probably going to look a bit different than a population in Houston or in San Antonio. And really learn about if there's one population that's particularly challenging, try to understand whether or not that population is the same consistent population over time, or whether there's changing individuals within that population. So are some individuals kind of self-resolving over time? And if they are, how are they doing that? What community resources are they using in order to self-resolve, right? Because you want to know both what's working, both at a community level, but also at an individual level, right? Folks are incredibly resilient, and you kind of want to tap into that resiliency. What are they already doing that works? For folks who are, if it is a population that's quickly changing, getting a better sense of where folks are coming from. So if you have a lot, I know in Houston, we have a lot of individuals kind of congregated around a bus station. And the reason for that is because that's where individuals are released from our justice system, right? And so if you wanted to think about prevention or diversion or an intervention strategy, you might want to target reentry programs. So really understanding where people are coming from might help you better design an intervention prior to connect with folks before they get there. If individuals are hesitant about being housed, which we see a lot of, and there can be a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes it's trust. Sometimes it's just, they're comfortable. They know what they know. They're hesitant to leave. But it's really, you have to talk to folks to understand what their barriers are. So really assessing their barriers to housing. And then also what their assets are. So again, going back to the fact that some folks might be self-resolving. How? What assets do they have, and what assets does the community have? So I'm a researcher, so I always start from a place of research and better understanding the community. Next slide, please. So if your goal is to end homelessness, which I imagine it is because that's all of our goal, right? You really need to have two simultaneous strategies. One that's focused on getting folks housed who are currently experiencing homelessness, but the other is really on going upstream, kind of this public health approach to homelessness, whether it's prevention or whether it's diversion, because you can help people who are currently experiencing homelessness. But if you're only doing that, there's just going to be new people who are funneling in, and you're never going to really address the problem. So you need to simultaneously do both of these things in order to really fully address homelessness for your city. Next slide, please. So I've been working, Dr. Sai and I have been working with Houston on some of their homelessness diversion tactics. And it's innovative work. There's not a lot of evidence-based work around diversion. People are starting to do it, but not a lot of research on how it's best done. And so there's a lot of opportunity here, I think, to really understand how to do diversion well. Some of the strategies that you can use for diversion include, there's a lot of emphasis on conflict resolution, connecting people back to their families, to their landlords, addressing their underlying needs, whether they're health needs, whether they're financial needs. Maybe it's transportation, maybe you need to get their car fixed, right? How do we do as little as we can in order to provide the maximum benefit? And that's the primary tenet of homelessness. Provide as little as possible to as many people as possible to create the maximum benefit. You can also provide direct support for housing. Next slide, please. And finally, I know that there's an interest in infrastructure. There's lots of innovation in this space. People are turning hotels and motels into housing sites. They're using tiny houses or shipping containers. There's also a lot of folks who have started to think about mixed-use spaces, so bringing together housing sites with retail. This is a fantastic idea in a lot of ways, right? The idea is that folks who are maybe living there might be able to work there. I would just caution you to think through some of the challenges that I've seen, including wanting to make sure that there is a business that is eager and wants to be in that space, that there's individuals who are going to be shopping in that space and who are willing to support that business, right? So just like with any retail business, just making sure that it's something that's wanted and needed and sustainable. I would, in addition to maybe thinking about retail, which is what I hear people talking about the most, I would encourage you to also thinking about a mixed-use space with supports and services. So providing healthcare there, providing ID services there. So kind of providing everything that people need within their living space. Next slide, please. That brings me to supports and services and the importance of supports and services. Next slide, please. You know, the focus for individuals experiencing homelessness is oftentimes on housing, but housing is not our endpoint, right? If you just get somebody housed and you don't provide the services that they need, they'll quickly return to homelessness. You need to both get people housed and you need to make sure that there's services in order to keep people housed. Next slide. Thank you so much. So one way of doing that is to make sure that the care that they're receiving is high quality care. Next slide, please. And so some of the, if you're going to walk away from today's presentation with just noting kind of one thing, it's the importance of, I think, an integrated or coordinated care model. So with both healthcare and housing and social services and food, and kind of thinking about all of the needs that individuals have and making sure that the coordination for those individuals is happening by the care team and that burden is not placed on that individual. I think we are all well aware of how difficult it sometimes is to navigate these tricky and sometimes fragmented systems. And when you put that burden on somebody with physical or behavioral health challenges, what ends up happening is they simply don't seek out the resources. They become discouraged and frustrated very quickly. And so I know that there's lots of innovative ideas and services that might be brought to folks. I would just encourage you to think about how to bring those together for people so that they know how to navigate that. So making sure that there's data sharing, which I'm sure you have over HMIS, but extending beyond HMIS to providers who may not use HMIS. Making sure services are co-located as much as possible. I imagine Brownsville's a little like Houston, when public transportation may not always be so easy to navigate. And so making sure everything's in one location means people can actually access it. Warm handoffs, not just telling people where to go, but helping them get there. And in work that I've done, we found that there's a significant difference when there's a shared plan of care. So those health care providers are coming together, they develop that plan of care for individuals. And then they are all working collaboratively together to make sure that that individual is meeting those goals. Next slide, please. In thinking about kind of best practices in healthcare and social service delivery, I know you're already doing street outreach, but I still feel like it's important to mention because, again, reducing those barriers to care for folks, meeting people where they're at, is incredibly important. I would encourage you, if you're not, when you're doing street outreach or if you have mobile units, what we see less of is coordinated street outreach or mobile units. So sometimes we say healthcare providers going out separately from our social service providers. As much as there can be coordination up front and it can be kind of one point of contact, that's ideal. Next slide, please. In thinking about the type of care that's delivered, I'm just throwing out a whole bunch of stuff and then just seeing kind of what feels exciting and folks are connecting with. You know, when you're providing care, making sure that the health care that's provided is culturally sensitive. So you're using kind of trauma-informed care models. So assuming that folks have experienced trauma, asking folks for their consent at each step of the process, telling them what's about to happen and why it's about to happen is incredibly important for all individuals, but particularly for individuals with experiences of homelessness who oftentimes may have experienced trauma in their lives. And also using a person-centered care model, which really means very individualized. That person's goal plan is their own, and they're developing it alongside their care team. Next slide, please. So again, I want to go back to this idea of what works for whom, and that's, this is up for you to decide kind of which model fits the best for you and your goals as a city. And so with a case management model, there's lots of different case management models that you can use and think of. These are in order of the kind of level of intensity. The first being assertive community treatment, which is kind of a high level of care and takes a good amount of time. The next is a critical time intervention, which takes a little less time and resources. And the final is the group intensive peer support model. Next slide, please. So assertive community treatment, there's a lot of evidence to support it. It's one of the only things that really works for individuals with severe mental illness. But there's a reason it works. It's because it takes a lot of time and effort, right? Services are available 24 hours a day. There's a small care team, so they each have a small caseload. So they're really able to individualize care and focus on folks. They're meeting people where they're at. So it focuses on a lot of these kind of best practices that we already talked about. But because of it's so intensive, it is expensive. So it's perhaps a good model to use for those who really need it, but may not be the model that you want to use for everybody because it'll quickly eat up all of your resources. Next slide, please. The next model is critical time intervention. Critical time intervention is, again, an evidence-based intervention. It's nice because it is time limited, and the goal is to take individuals from an important moment or time in their life, such as experiencing homelessness, and connect them to existing resources for long-term sustainability. Again, there's lots of evidence to support that this works. It's a little less expensive than ACT, but it is effective. So a model you might want to consider for case management. Next slide, please. And finally, the group intensive peer support model, which was actually a model co-developed by Dr. Tsai. This model is nice because it allows case management to be offered with peers within groups. So there's groups of 10 to 15 clients, and there's a certain number of steps that individuals walk through together. And so what that does is, of course, that maximizes the case manager's time if they're not doing all individualized case management. It allows for peer support, accountability among peers, and allows them to track their steps along the progress. So it may not work for everybody, but if you're thinking about how to maximize resources, this might be a nice way to think about doing it. Next slide, please. And so finally, I just wanted to end with thinking about employment, because when I talk to folks experiencing homelessness, most do want to be employed. There's a sense of pride that comes with it and a sense of giving back. And so if there's a way to support people in those goals, I would encourage thinking through how that might work. With supported employment, it's similar to permanent supportive housing or a housing first model where you connect them to employment and then you provide the case management around that employment. So making sure that they're actually able to sustain that employment. And so one kind of innovative approach to could be providing housing and then providing case management around employment as opposed to around maintaining housing. So lots of different kind of ways of approaching that. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. So kind of in conclusion, some of the things that we talked about is I would encourage you, if you haven't already, start with that needs and assets assessment, both with clients and with the community. I know you have tremendous resources. Identify where those are and how to best use them. And also thinking about what the client's unique needs are. In Brownsville, that might look different than they would, say, in Houston. Also think through what your philosophy is, right? If you provide intensive resources through ACT, through PSH, it'll work. There's evidence that it'll work, but it'll take a lot of resources to do it. So is the goal to really target those highest level, highest need folks with the best tools possible? Or is your goal to make sure as many people are able to receive resources as possible? And so then maybe you're using kind of a lower resource model. And that's completely up for you to decide, right? But those are some of the tough conversations that sometimes have to happen. Thinking through your housing first model, maybe a housing first philosophy, or maybe you do want to have something that's time limited. Maybe you want to really focus on prevention and diversion and making sure that you're keeping people from ever experiencing homelessness. Care models, those are just some of the care models we discussed today. Case management, again, thinking through those different types of case management models. Whether it's time limited, do you want to do individual or peer? There's no right or wrong answer. It's finding the right fit for your population. And finally, because I'm a researcher, I have to end on this note, just making sure that whatever you're doing, I would encourage you to, pilot it first, see whether it works, make adaptations as needed, and just thinking about the data that you're collecting and allowing it to drive you and move you forward. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to take questions. I don't know whether Dr. Tsai has been able to join us. If so, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer questions as well. And thank you so much for attending and listening today.
Thank you, Vanessa. Does anybody from the commission have any questions?
Dr. Schick, this is Rose Gowan. I met you quite by accident down at the beach a year or so ago. I'm so glad that we finally connected, and it was really an accident that we met, a timely one. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It really helps me get my thoughts together in the organization and realize there's a great deal of work out there that other folks have worked very hard on. And thank you, Dr. Tsai. I've not met you in person, but thank you for joining us.
Happy to be on. Yeah, I'm just here to crash the party. Vanessa did all the work putting together the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the work you did connecting us and getting us here today.
Okay, I guess nobody has any questions or any follow-ups. So for this portion, thank you all so much.
All that I would like to say is it's an excellent presentation. We enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your work with us.
Okay, is there another one after this, Marina?
Mayor, for the homelessness component, there's not another presentation. We would be going into the work plan section.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schick, Dr. Tsai, for being available and for presenting. And we greatly appreciate it. And we have several social service agencies and organizations participating here in the workshop. We greatly appreciate all your work. Thank you so much.
Please let us know how we can help.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure we will. Thanks a lot for your time.
Okay.
It means a lot, and this is an issue that we're seeing. So I'm glad that we have some expert input and advice. Thanks.
Mayor, on the public comment period, we did have one public comment form that was sent in for Jose Colon Valles. And he would like to make a public comment about homelessness.
Okay.
Jose, are you on?
I saw him earlier. Joe, are you
Yes,
on?
I'm right here. Hi, good afternoon. Good evening.
Hey, welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Good afternoon, commissioners, mayor. My name is Joe Colon-Valles. Most of you know me, but I currently work in civic engagement for Texas Freedom Network. But before this job, I also worked for the Valley AIDS Council as a risk reduction specialist doing HIV testing, including street outreach and prevention services. And I also currently serve as co-chair of the LGBTQ task force for the city of Brownsville. I've heard a lot of great things today, but today I'm here to share information from the National Center for Transgender Equality and the Trevor Project, which works closely with LGBTQ youth in suicide prevention. Homelessness is a critical issue for trans people. 1 in 5 transgender individuals have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. Family rejection, discrimination, and violence have contributed to a large number of transgender and other LGBTQ identified youth who are homeless in the US. So an estimated out of the 1.6 million homeless youth in the country, about 20 to 40% of them identify as trans or LGBTQ. Unfortunately, social service and homeless shelters that work with these populations often fail to culturally and appropriately serve transgender or LGBTQ homeless youth, including denying them shelter based on their gender, identity, or orientation, inappropriately housing them in a gendered space they do not identify with, and failing to address co-occurring issues facing transgender homeless adults and youth. So today I'm here to make sure that these are points that are being considered or even discussed in these initiatives, and that there's opportunities for organizations that already serve these populations locally to help support the more nuanced work in the field. I find it hard to believe that out of the almost 500 people experiencing homelessness in Cameron County, that there were 0 who were trans-identified or gender nonconforming. There are groups working to meet these needs in the Rio Grande Valley and in the state of Texas. Off the top of my head, I can think of Casa Kimberly, which is being organized and built by Gender Equality Network of Texas out of McAllen, Texas. The Valley AIDS Council is actually launching Casa Orgullo, which is an LGBTQ youth homeless shelter in McAllen, Texas as well. And in Houston and Dallas, I can think of Casa San Andrea, which is organized by Organización Latina Trans de Texas. These organizations also provide additional support services like helping people find temporary or long-term housing, social services, case management, HIV testing, prevention services, mental health support, and substance abuse support, which are vital to addressing the social determinants of health for gender and sexual variant people. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, our next items are the work sessions, and the first one is fiscal year 2020 work plan review.
Good evening, Mayor Commissioners. We have a brief presentation for you. You should have copies of the work plans for fiscal year 20 and 21 that were sent out on Friday as part of your packet. So this purpose is really to just cover you all's strategic vision and then to update you on the completion of the fiscal year 2020 work plan and then what the initiatives are for the next fiscal year. The work plans, as a reminder, this is our first year that we had instituted the work plan. So the work plan model is a way of aligning the work of all of our departments with the commission's strategic vision, which is what you're seeing before you here on the screen. We don't have every bullet point that corresponds with each pillar, but it's just to give you a nice reminder of some of the items that you all discussed over the past year and a half, beginning with August 2019. We brought the work plans before you all back in February, and at that time, you all gave us feedback. We took more of a line item approach, which was lengthier. It didn't focus on the key items. So this time we'll just have 2 infographics with what we've done and what we intend to accomplish toward these pillars and these statements that give more detail as to the strategies that you all want us to focus on. And then the work plan really is the how we intend to meet those strategies and pillars through objectives that we'll carry out throughout the year. The work of the work plans is something that directors individually lead for their departments, but they are tasked with working with their department staff and engaging with them, and then further coordinating with the city manager's office. So that creates more accountability so that we all know what we're working toward, and there's also more engagement with staff. What we also do is we need to pretty much bounce off the work plan objectives or triangulate, so to speak, with the budget, with the capital improvement program, with other plans and initiatives that we have. Because if we have, for example, a work plan item for any department, but there's no funding for it, then it's not going to go anywhere because it needs to have funded. So there's nothing here that is unfunded or that really cannot get accomplished within a 12-month fiscal year span. Some items could be starting to get explored, for example. That might not require resources, but it may be something that we bring for you all as part of the CIP next year or as part of the budget. I do want to note that for fiscal year 20, the theme that impacted our work plans was COVID-19. So, no work plan accounted for COVID. One of the notable things that we did that I thought was very helpful and timely was the 5-year general fund forecast. That really helped us understand our financial environment and scan things that are external to the organization that could impact us financially. We were able to make short-term adjustments because of that information, but we really want to focus on the long term and making sure that we don't encounter things that we can avoid by just having a better plan in place. So I need to commend the work of directors, and you'll see in the fiscal year 20 slide that will come next that directors were asked to pivot. The organization had to adapt, and we had to engage in rapid innovation to pretty much stand up virtual operations for a lot of our departments, repurpose employees, develop continuity plans to ensure that we could account for the operations continuing despite the pandemic's duration, which we understood could be long-term, that we care for our employees' needs, emotional, financial, et cetera. So that really is a major theme that our work plans now include a column that talks about what was the impact of COVID and how do we work backward adjusting our Department of Work plans because of it. So next slide, please. So here before you is the fiscal year 20 work plan highlights. So these are just to show the commission, here are some of the key accomplishments, I guess you can say as well, of what was done within the pillars that you all have prescribed. So I won't touch on every one, but you'll notice that there's a lot of good things that have been happening throughout the organization. These were kind of handpicked projects that we want to bring before you to show you just a demonstration of here's some of the work that happened this past year, and here's where it fits, and here's how it aligns with your vision. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point. We have our city manager's office and all directors present just to see if there's any questions that the commission, mayor, or that you may have on the 2020 work plans, because we did provide you all the details, but we just want to focus on some of these projects.
Does anybody have any questions or any issues with any of this so far? Mr. Bernal, if you could you tell us if COVID affected any of this? What was affected the most? I mean, I went through the plans, but was there anything of note that maybe was affected by COVID?
One of the things that is notable, Mayor, is our wellness program. We were initially going to schedule that in April for a soft start, and then October 1 was the hard start, or the full citywide start. That was delayed, and as you know, that's a major. The health plan is something that we've begun to focus on because of the need to make it sustainable for the long term. So that's something that we were not able to move forward on. Other notable things, I'll have to ask Helen and some of the team members to see what within their departments are of note, because what we did is we ranked it by high, mid, and low impact. Some items had no impact, but in terms of the city manager's office, the wellness program is the one that stands out that we had to delay. Are there anything else, directors, that you all want to share within your departments? What was delayed because of COVID?
I know there might have been in CDB probably had to, due to travel restrictions, not go to one of the trade fairs. And so I think related to travel where maybe something might have been canceled due to travel restrictions. I know that we had one health department have a ciclovia scheduled that they wanted to postpone for November. So mostly related, mayor and city commission to travel restrictions that were imposed towards the end that I can recall, but if my directors want to identify anything else, but that's mostly what I've heard. Mostly have been at least initiated, possibly with a longer time frame for completion. For example, if Tech Stop had crew that was COVID affected, or maybe one of our crews, but I wouldn't say, one of the things, we're still be able to complete these, or in terms of engineering public works, the 2017, 18, and 2019 CDBG and CIP projects, at least begin and complete those. And so I would say mostly travel related. If something involved a trade fair, a group, a large gathering of people, that those were.
Noel, I think he's talking on, you're on mute.
Oh, go ahead,
There.
Rose. Yes.
I noticed that Belden Trail Phase 3 is there, but I don't see West Rail. Are you including that in some other thing that I don't
Yes,
see?
that's in fiscal 21. There was some work that continued toward the West Rail. The actual start of construction is scheduled to begin in fiscal 21. So we have that under 21, yes.
Okay, thanks.
What I'm looking, Mayor, just at scanning through the work plans, if you look at library, and that makes a lot of sense, they had some programming that they canceled because of COVID. They had different interactive programs that they did not have, robotics, the planetarium, the observatory, all that makes sense. PD, they have delayed the taxi cab ordinance. I know you may be familiar with that item, and the delay is more so because of capacity. PD obviously has been on the front lines with a lot of other things going on, so that was delayed. So those are just some things that stand out here in looking at the status of some of the projects. I see that Parks delayed a committee that they were going to create to pursue accreditation. That also was delayed. They also had a playground built opportunity in Monterrey that was delayed. So most things that deal with public contact, things of that sort, appear to be the things that were delayed the most.
Mr. Bernal and Mayor and Commission, this is Joel Garza, Mobility Director. The one item that I know on our department for multimodal was the realignment. It was something that was scheduled for March. Due to COVID, it was delayed, but we were able to implement it late August.
Thank you, Joel. Yes, and the fire department, same thing. I see that they had some awareness programs or fairs. They delayed that, same thing, public contact. So those are some of the things. I think in finance, Mayor, there were some delays, but those were not tied to anything other than a staffing change within the procurement division. So some procurement items there were delayed. We do have a new procurement manager that starts soon. So those items will stay in fiscal 21, and we'll pursue those as part of the new work plan. Notably in the slide here, what I want to point out is under economic development, you'll notice that we have the COVID-19 business support. So there were various micro innovations that were done, the parklet program, the curbside program, the disinfection courses with TSC. Those are some things that were not on the work plan, but that were accomplishments under economic development in response to COVID. We wanted to note that because a lot of effort went into this, and there was some great thinking and a lot of execution in a quick turnaround time to make these programs available for our business community. I would also highlight under infrastructure. Last year, we may have noted to the commission that we were behind with some street projects, CDBG wise and CIP. Those were caught up this year. So we're now up to speed with 2020 streets. That's a big item. You probably noticed a lot of work got done throughout the city. Much of that is because those projects had funding but had not been executed. Public Works and Engineering, there's efficiency with having both traffic and engineering in one department. And they've done things to streamline capital projects. That's also very notable. And I know the community and some of you all have been complimentary of our efforts there. And then we have big projects like the broadband plan, the Gladys Porter Zoo plan that's under quality of life. Those are all things that are important. We've started with safer implementation under public safety, and the PD has done several other things that are very community oriented, whether it's awareness programs, whether it's a mobile app. They have several positive community relation type projects that they've also implemented.
The only thing that, oh, go ahead. Was somebody going to say something?
Go ahead.
The only thing that I take issue with, well, and I understand if this is COVID related, right? It was a weird year for everybody. In the past, I have seen larger amounts of jobs added and larger amounts of money that were brought in under economic development. And that's my only thing, that we need to continue pushing 10 times as hard than we have been to really, you know, the city goes round because there's money in it and jobs, and people are able to feed their families. So that's my only thing. But I'm really happy to see everything that was completed despite all of the things that the city faced this year.
I think that's a great point. And interestingly, in prior years, at least since I've been here, the city really did not have a kind of a focus on economic development. That was really left to the EDCs. Now we have the position of retail and redevelopment manager, which is what Connie does. And Helen has also been a liaison to 4A and 4B. Some of these projects we were very hands-on with as part of our redevelopment efforts. So the city now actually has a much more hands-on role in economic development, whereas before we really weren't involved. It was a role that we had just left to EDCs. We feel, to your point, that it's too important to leave it up to EDCs. Yes, they have a primary role, but we also now have a supportive role that in certain instances becomes more hands-on, because we want to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So that's why we actually have some of these points to show, because either Helen or Connie work directly with Josh or other entities to make them happen.
As the former GA chair who worked very hard trying to reach here, I'm very, very grateful that you're working on those initiatives. And I really have to credit Connie with the Hobby Lobby, not to get off task, but that was something that the city of Brownsville had been trying to do for years. And it's just proof that, you know, Connie is an awesome person and was able to get it done. And I'm so looking forward to the future and everything else that she's going to be able to bring to Brownsville. So that, I have to give her so much credit. That's a puzzle that nobody else before her could work on to get done, and she did very easily.
Yes, yeah, we almost added it on here, but there was just too many, there wasn't enough space. And if you look at the work plans, there's a lot more that was done. These are just some of the highlights. We were at our attendance at the ICSC conference, the Conference for International Shopping Centers, which is where a lot of the deals happen. That's where the city wasn't at before. I know the 4B used to attend, but the city did not have that retail engagement. Now we have that. And that's where a lot of these contacts occur. That's kind of where Blackbird Diner happened. Those all were because of ICSC leads that don't always materialize within a short time. It takes sometimes years. But fortunately, they're noticing Brownsville. They see the energy and the momentum, and that development is right here. So that's how some of this was able to get done in such a short time.
Excellent work. Excellent work.
No, Noel, or
if I would just add to that, is that the 68 million is only commercial. If you add residential was another 62 million. So it was $130 million worth of investment if you factor in non-commercial, which is residential apartments, and commercial. So it's 130 million, with 446 permits, commercial only permits. And then the 350 jobs are only attributed to the Hobby Lobby, Maximus expansion. So they took over the old Target space that had been in that long time, and then the tech company. So it's just those notable projects. But the other permits that have been taken out, 73 in new commercial construction probably have other jobs related. We just highlighted those 3 business.
Good to know.
Commissioner Castro, thank you.
So I think it's wonderful. And now that you've got Hobby Lobby, can you please check out Sprouts?
And PF Chang's.
Yes.
No, I'm talking organic, healthy choices.
Yes, absolutely, Rose. And we can always, there's always a market, right? It's based on market. But yes, if you all have these pet projects, what we won't do, I'll admit, is we won't do a community survey to recruit them here. I've seen communities that they want X business and they go out and do all these things that don't work, but we will truly engage through our retail efforts to look for the types of, you see, part of the vision of the city is that we want to make sure that we're recruiting the types of businesses that the commission, that the community desires, and hopefully the market validates. So it's good to know some of these things so that we can pursue them.
It would be nice if you could do something where the public, like if maybe on our website somewhere where you can ask for the public's input into these things, because I feel like they should have a voice.
Yeah, we could consider that, maybe a kind of a retail survey to see what type of retail, what industries they desire here. I don't remember. I thought at the developer meet and greet, Helen, I don't remember if a survey was done.
Well, what we did it in the code rewrite, when we did it, it was pretty neat because we had a live survey of the types of commercial businesses, but they were more commercial types, like mixed use, small business, larger corporations. I think Commissioner Castro was asking for, and Commissioner Coward asking, what type of grocery, diversify the types of commercial that we have or grocery that we have. And we can definitely do that. I know we talked about it last year, but we can definitely do it this year.
Thank you.
Sprouts is on our radar. We've been after them at every ICSC. We met with them at the last ICSC, Commissioner Gowan, so we are on them. And now PF Chang's.
We'll have to start a petition.
Awesome. Well, let's go to the next slide. This will one of the benefits of going through this also is that when we do the fiscal year 2020 year in review that Felipe and Communications will do, a lot of this will be what we'll have as accomplishments for fiscal year 2020. So can we go to the next slide, please? And I'll ask Helen if she can please cover some of the high points for 2021. So we did the same. So we did the same for 2021. We can't call them highlights because we haven't done this, but we're calling them notable initiatives. Here are what you can expect that will be happening within the organization in the next year. So Helen, would you want to take a stab at this slide?
Sure. With regard to economic development, as we just discussed with the retail redevelopment strategy, we could definitely have a survey. Actually, Felipe Romero was texting me that they have this really cool new app or program called City Bot that we've been wanting to extend it. It's almost very easy. It's a text that you get to your phone, and you can ask a very simple question and very easy to interact. Similar as what we do with our with different hurricane awareness or census awareness, we could actually use it for other types of surveys as well. The design and construction of this, the communications and marketing and ECAC bridge, there's a synergy there on Adams Street. The zoo, now we're talking about completion of a lot of these initiatives. I don't want to go over each one, but basically you can see getting ready for the TAP Games planning team, which is a 3-year process. Completion of the airport, Final negotiations on Project Alpha, which is an economic development project that's led by the city. Therefore, the MOU with the National Guard to acquire data mining personnel at no cost. So you see a lot of innovation, which is one of the things that the commission and actually COVID, even pre-COVID, we did innovation, but COVID just reinforces the need to do this, whether it's the CAD RMS transition plan for the police department, to developing a training for LNG facilities to ensure that they're coming online. The fire department's completion of a fire assessment in partnership with the Center for Public Safety Management. So here we see best practices of how we determine performance and measure ourselves. As you all know, the health department had to innovate through a new COVID-19 hotline call center, and Commissioner Gowan been a big part of that. From the cannery project, public market space in terms of healthy food, that's an example of what can reinforce the wellness of our community. Hosting festivals virtually, and I'm talking to our community partners on how they want to host their festivals virtually, maybe safety distancing. You know, just talking to many of our community partners on their festival is something that we're also looking through the conventions and visitor bureau department. A big part of this is the sidewalks and trails master plan. Here you have the West Rail Trail plan under infrastructure and the construction of the Southwest Nature Trail Phase 2. We have large trail and trail project. As part of the technology, the Smart City Roadmap will be in close communication with the Brownsville Utility Board on that. Also, the GPS training facility groundbreaking, the phase 1 of that large project. The broadband and digital inclusion, as you know, we have a survey going on right now on that will extend out in December. Also, one of the things that you won't see on the work plan, but we're working on too, is the census and getting the last 1 month. We're extended a month out and really working, you know, on getting our census numbers out. The big RFQ for the mobility plan, you know, we talk about the different types of the 5 ports of entry, and really that's going to really highlight the mobility that we have in our thinking with regard to roads, trails, pedestrian, bike, space in the different types of airport and train. So the different types of transportation with regard to mobility and how they integrate with each other. The year-end review has team manager identified, and also professional development that we need to continue with our staff and with our leaders. And you know, getting ready for the May 2021 general election is a big one. And also developing that dashboard and transparency for having financial transparency, which is also a technology platform. And also, you know, for the first time, looking at artificial intelligence in our accounts payable software system. So a big focus on technology to make us more efficient, given that we are lean. You know, we have that hiring freeze, soft freeze, and so that requires us to be more innovative and pilot that new technology as we go through our next work. I don't know, probably forgot something, but basically the downtown, the development of downtown. But if you have any questions, we all have our directors here as well. Many streets will be paved. That's a big part of our initiative through new construction and reconstruction and maintenance of our streets and also drainage projects.
Thanks, Helen. Are there any questions, Mayor, Commissioners? I probably could highlight a few more points, but I want to make sure we answer any questions or get feedback on fiscal 21.
Just want to say that 2020 was the year of obstacles, and I really hope that 2021 is just the year of abundance and opportunity, and I declare it for Brownsville. So we're really looking forward to it.
I hope that's the case, Commissioner. We're all praying for that for sure. But I think we've also taken 2020 as an opportunity to kind of plan and see the opportunities and seize a lot of opportunities that are out there. And I can tell you, we haven't stopped working. Our team is still doing all sorts of work. This 2021 work plan in itself is amazing. So many exciting projects on here. I can't wait for it to happen.
I agree.
Yes, absolutely. We take the blessing. We're looking forward to a positive year. But I will tell you, Mayor, that I've taken part. I'm so proud of our team and in a couple of roundtables. One was state, one was national on COVID-19, and those were invitation based because Brownsville has been highlighted as a city that has responded very effectively to COVID. And I'll tell you that not every organization responds well. Some organizations crumble under pressure, and we did not. Our team innovated, they executed, they pivoted, they got things done. We did not. One of the things we cannot do is we cannot stop investing in our people. So we had our first cohort for professional development. You saw it in our fiscal 20. UTRGV shifted with us. They were able to shift to put together a virtual program. It was very successful. The feedback from our first 35 cohort participants was very, very positive. Now we have classes 2 through 4, and some of our own employees were recognizing that we have a lot of talent from within. Some of them are coming up with great ideas for things we can do across departments. And I think that's where the energy is. Organizations tend to cut back training, cut back those types of development opportunities. We didn't really have a major budget. We only had 70,000 that y'all supported for fiscal 20, but every class cost $6,000. UTRGV has given us a great deal, and we have strong practitioners. So that money is going to go a long way at developing our employees. And I think that will become a strength because we're not going to underinvest in our human capital during COVID. It's our employees and their knowledge and their ideas that are going to get us out of any challenges we face. I also want to highlight that we have a very strong portfolio of technology initiatives. We will be implementing an artificial intelligence software to process accounts payable. And when we highlight that, we likely will be the first city in the Valley to be implementing any type of machine learning or artificial intelligence software. And that'll be within the finance department. That software has the potential to do the work of about 1.5's worth of an accountant. And what we want to do is just stay efficient. We're not looking at replacing staff. We're looking at staying efficient so that our staff can do less menial, mundane tasks and engage in more higher level tasks that are around strategy. So there's a lot of stuff in here. The health plan is another big item. We're going to continue with the wellness program and then other strategies. We just finished the book study in the month of September. Every Friday, we spend an hour and a half as an executive team covering that book so that we can get ready for implementing some of those ideas for our organization. So there's just a lot here, but it will get done and it's very attainable, which is why it's before you.
I just want to say you guys have done an awesome job during COVID, aside from other things which we're seeing tonight. And I just want to remind that COVID is not over. It's not over by a long shot, and more so, it looks like there's going to be a very big resurgence in the fall, in the winter time. And I think you're poised to be able to lead us through that, and I think that's wonderful. I think the other thing that I want to commend your staff for is that they're not afraid to ask questions of professors and universities and people with real expertise that is beyond our current knowledge. And I think that speaks well if you are not afraid to ask for the help that you need to be able to guide the city. And I think that's just wonderful. So there are other initiatives that will need to be considered, especially in laboratory testing and such, that we've begun to look at. And I take my hat off to you. You guys have really hit the mark, and your directors are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, Dr. Godwin. We appreciate that. And we're aware of that. COVID's not over. One of the features of the fiscal 21 work plan that I highlighted in the memo in the packet is that every director engaged with their team. At the very top, they have what we call a mindset statement. And what we wanted to do is have every director share the respective mindset of their department. And you can read that while every department is doing different things to respond to COVID, every department is prepared to innovate and they're leading from the front. And that's what impresses me, that what they're doing in supporting their staff is very amazing, because they're actually leading through crisis, and that's very difficult to do. And our biggest job as a city manager's office is to support them mentally, physically, spiritually, continuing to lead them and facilitate those discussions so that they can execute with confidence, knowing that we support their efforts. So there'll be no relapse for us in terms of what we got to do. We just need to adjust how we do it.
And to follow up on that, Noel, and also to echo Commissioner Gowan's sentiments, as far as COVID, we are definitely not past this yet. And I think we need to continue to improvise and innovate and lead the way on that. But I will say, I mean, I've been here almost a year and a half, and I wasn't here when Commissioner Gowan and Commissioner Tetro and some of the others were here, but I was always on the periphery, kind of, keeping a good pulse on things. And I can say that the team and the administration we have, the commission we have, it's a different energy. I feel like it's a different level of sophistication. It's just, we're moving at a different pace, a much faster pace, a very, at the same time though, a very deliberate and data-driven pace, which I think is the right way to do it. And I'm just excited and really energized being able to be a part of this at this moment in time. I think everybody's doing a fantastic job. We got a great team. And I'm just, I'm honored to be a part of it. And I just can't wait to see what else we're able to do over the next couple of years.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Great credit to our staff. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mayor, we're done. We had 2 slides. They're jam-packed with bullets, but every bullet has meaning, and we could speak on every item. Directors are here, but we're pretty much done with sharing what we present for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Does anybody else have any follow-ups or any input or questions?
More of our presentation should be like that.
We're working on it. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Make
All
that.
right, ma'am. We're all set. If y'all have any questions on the work plans, let us know. Not just what was before you all, but the work plans are very detailed, and we'll take any feedback even after today if y'all have any questions.
Okay.
All right. Well, Mayor, we're all set.
Okay. Unless anybody else has any other questions or input, I guess we're done.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. To have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
It is 6:24 and the meeting has ended.